Welcome, Alex, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Helms Deep, this new album, Chasing the Dragon, and more things related to the metal world in general. So we are starting by asking, how are you doing today? How is the band in the last couple of years? Because your previous album, or your first album, Treacherous Ways, was released in 2023.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Um, we've had some changes in the band, I'm sure you guys noticed,
Mhm.
but I think it's for the better. I love this version. I love uh, what I originally wanted to do actually was two guitars and have some more proggy style drums, kind of like the way Hal does. He's a big Neil Peart fan, so he's got that kind of Rush influence to him with a lot of percussion and a lot of bells and whistles. When we had got Heller on, he's different. He's a different style drummer, incredibly talented. I mean, obviously, Mike is an animal, like one of the fastest, craziest drummers I've ever seen for sure. But yeah, I mean, he didn't want to do, gongs and lots of high pitched toms and stuff. So I remember when we were recording the first one. So, um, for the second, I was like, let's try something else. And I think it was for the best. I think Hal he's awesome, man. I think he fits that kind of new wave British heavy metal style that,
Mhm.
we have some influences of that definitely in the sound. I think he fits that a little bit more. Mike might have been a bit overqualified, but it was something special. Mike he was great. He plays in Malignancy, bands like
Mhm.
that, like Tech Death, but he plays in Raven too. So, he makes it work. But he definitely takes Raven even to a whole different. It's like a different band with Mike. So that's just how he is, and he's great. But I think for my personal taste, I think Hal is just like the perfect fit drum wise, and getting Ray involved too, having the contrast of the two guitars is like that's my dream, man. I love dueling guitars.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, okay. So, and in this situation, when the start of the process, or in general, to composition from this new album, it was during the Mike was retired, before Mike, or it wasn't exactly the process when the process or started for this chasing the track, and all the songs are new, or did you rescue any composition from the previous album?
Okay, so yeah, after I finished tracking Treacherous,
Mhm.
um, I was all done and I was just waiting for it to be mixed. So I was pretty inspired from the whole process because I had never used Pro Tools before, and I learned how to use Pro Tools. I learned, me and Mike actually worked together on some of the songs for Treacherous Ways because I had brought him a bunch of demos, and some of the songs weren't really complete. Mike actually did help rearrange stuff, and he had some. He basically he'd say this part, this song needs like a bridge and a chorus, and he'd make me. So I'm like, I'll go write a bridge and a chorus, and then he'd say, this part needs like a transition, and I'd be like, I'll go write a transition. So he kind of got me, more. He got me better at writing music. Really, he sort of showed me a lot of just techniques where I was like, when he pushed me to do it, I'm like, oh yeah, this it definitely makes sense. This makes everything more interesting, and you got to just kind of keep chipping away at the song until you say when it's finished, but you really got to get it to be as interesting as possible before it's finished, but you don't want to overdo it, so there's a balance. But yeah, when we were recording, when I finished tracking Treacherous Ways, I pumped out like I think 10 more songs, and I was like, yeah, we got the whole we got the whole second album, I think. But it was pretty fast. It all just kind of poured out, and because I was so inspired, and I was like, I'm gonna strike while the iron's hot. So.
Mhm. Okay, okay, okay. I understand for this one. So now, when decide to start the project for this Helms Deep? Because I saw that this Mike is from Raven, from Malignancy, but then also John Gallagher is from Raven, and also Halaponte comes from a Cold Steel, and Ray DeTaunt comes from another band. So when decides to start a project like this, a Helms Deep very focused way, because when I hear these two albums, is new wave of the British heavy metal in the sound way. So when do you decide to start a project like this?
I'd say probably 10 years ago I started writing the riffs and the songs, I started trialing and erroring. Because before this I was just a guitar player. I never did vocals. So I had moved back to New York for I was living in the woods in Massachusetts for like 4 years. And I moved back to New York. I started hanging out with all my old metal buddies again, and we just got, we were hanging out all the time and listening to this stuff. And I'm like, I had been in some bands all through, high school, and then when I was up in Massachusetts, I was in a couple, but they were more, fusion, prog kind of stuff, experimental. Um, and yeah, when I moved back down here, I was like, you know what? I think I gotta just like do a metal project, like a real one, because I had tried to do some thrash stuff in high school and it just didn't work out. Like the bandmates, they were flaky and just didn't work out. And this time I was like, you know what? I really want to do this, and I started writing music. I started showing them. They would laugh. They'd be like, "Oh, holy shit, this sucks." The first bunch, because it does. Usually, when you first start singing and stuff, it's just it sucks. So I'd be like, "Damn it," and I'd go back into the studio and try again. And then like that show me, they were like, "Nah, dude, this sucks." And I'd come back again, and then eventually I got to one where they were like, "Oh man, this is actually pretty cool." And so I'm like, okay, so like I would kind of just bounce off the feedback from my friends, because they're super picky, dude. And I mean, I'm super picky too, but you don't really know until you show other people that like how people are going to react. So I was kind of bouncing off like, okay, the people seem to like this one, like let me roll with this. And I would, just trial and error, and through that process my riffs just started getting better and better, and vocals better. And so eventually, it was like kind of around COVID. I moved to Colorado, and I had like, um, I had these 10 or 11 songs, and I was like talking to them. Wait, they were back in New York. I'm like, I really want to do this. Do you guys want to do it? But they, so because one of my buddies played drum, the other played guitar, and we were going to do something, but just shit happens in life. It didn't work out. And so I was like, you know what, it's never going to happen. I got to like find somebody to play drums and bass. And so I was on the lookout. I had talked to a few different guys, and I went to see Raven when I was in Colorado. And I, yeah, they hung out with us. There was only like a couple people at that show for some reason. Like the promoter screwed up, and it was like me and like five other people or something. It was a small bar they played, and the Gallaghers came out afterwards. They were hanging out with us, and I was talking to them. I was like, did you guys hire that drummer? Because he was really good. And they told me, yeah, he's for hire if you want to hire him. Like, because at this point, I'm like, dude, I think I should just hire somebody, because getting people to like really commit to your music is not easy to do. It's not, depending on some people get lucky and they just like, you know, they find people and they're like, and that's it. But for me, it was like I've been through trying to get this done with like so many different people, and it wasn't working out. So I'm like, at this point, I gotta just get a drummer, and then make a really good version of this music, and then maybe that'll lead me somewhere. So I got Mike on board. Mike was like, I had another bass player that I was trying out at the time, and Mike was like, no, you should just get John to do it. And I'm like, I didn't know I could do that, but okay. I mean, I'm not gonna say, of course, not gonna say no. But yeah. So John ended up recording with us too, and yeah, we put that album out, and that's pretty much how it went down. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Interesting. So now you told me about the one idea that at the beginning you didn't. Oh, you never think about you will sing in Helms in voice because you expect another people. So, and for example, in the future, will you find another people to sing the songs from Helms Deep, or you will continue doing this job?
No, at this point, I'm just gonna do it, because yeah, I got a feel for it now. Now I'm pretty confident with it. I can write songs and it's kind of got its own sound. Like at first I was like I wanted to find somebody else like as a singer to sing
Mhm.
because I'd write the melodies and lyrics and I was like I don't know if I want to do this, but now that we're this far in, it's done. Yeah, it's just got to stay that way, I guess.
Mm. Okay,
Yeah, I don't
okay.
think it's gonna be like Angel Witch or something where they just switch singers, you know?
Mhm. Okay, okay. So now talking about more about the promotion of this new Chasing the Dragon. So, what kind of plans do you have for this new album? Perhaps you will do some gigs in US, presentations, or what kind of plans do you have in general for Helms Deep? Perhaps you're already working a new album. Who knows?
Um, no, no, I'm not gonna say any tour stuff because we don't know yet. But I think at some point we're gonna have to play the stuff live for sure. There's nothing like scheduled or planned at the moment because we all live in different states. It's a little tough to make it happen, but someday we'll make that happen. Yeah, and I mean I already started writing some new stuff too, so we'll probably do a third one.
Hmm.
Yeah. A little slower this time. You know, I'm not like pumped. The last time it just flooded, it was probably a month. I had 10 more songs. This time I'm like taking my time a little more. I want to do something different, you know, than this last album. Like actually evolve the band, you know.
Hmm. Okay, yes, that's okay, okay. So now, as you well, you said it. The next record will be evolved because right now, when we are talking about heavy metal, there is a few bands that play something different. If we are talking about heavy metal, when we hear your band sounds has the sounds of a bunch of group of the new wave of British heavy metal. That's completely normal. So, do you think that in the future Helms did present well their evolution sound with this heavy metal because a lot of bands are stick with the sound of the old bands.
Yeah. I like to stick with the old school kind of sound.
Mhm.
I think this second album is definitely more progressive. There's fusion involved, like you know, elements of fusion involved in it. And I think I like that sound. I think that's my perfect vision of what Helm's Deep should be. You know, I like the mix of because it's mostly like the main chunks are heavy. It's just like good old school metal, and then it's got these other elements kind of thrown in that just keep it interesting and make it something different than you know just the same just riff after riff. You know, I love metal. You know, I love Motorhead. You know, that's simple stuff. There's no progressive or fusion in Motorhead, and I'll listen to that all day. But I think this project's just for stuff that I like, and I like to go out to outer space, man. I like to try weird stuff, you know, with music. And if I can make that happen with metal, I think that's a cool thing that, you know, it's a cool thing to do.
Okay, okay, okay. I understand because obviously Treacherous for Ways and also this new album, Chase the Dragon, has this concept of the old heavy metal, the cover art, especially the dragon and the other art, the gargoyle, something like this. It's like heavy metal, classic heavy metal stuff. So, in this situation, how do you see now the future of the heavy metal sound in general? Especially, we are talking about from the sound that it was created during the 70s and 80s. Because you said it, you hear a lot of Motorhead all day, but there is no new bands that try to go beyond of this sound in general in heavy metal.
Um, I think some bands do it. You know, I think some bands they definitely use, you know, scales and modes that you wouldn't normally hear in metal. I think Satan is probably one band I could think of that, you know, they really just like dig and find every possible like weird thing you can do in that context. Um, what I'm trying to do, I mean, I love stuff, all kinds of stuff like that. Do playing weird riffs, stuff you wouldn't think about, not just power chords over and over, you know. But I also like to add other things, you know, weird instruments, like folk instruments, stuff that like maybe you'd hear from like Led Zeppelin or you know, because they were using mandolins and stuff like I love that, but I mean, you know, the folk aspect, I don't know. I'm trying to do something that just hasn't been done. Like I don't think anybody's played a pipa in metal ever, like a Chinese guitar. That's what a pipa is. Like, I don't think anybody's done that. So you know, I guess I'm the first one to probably do that. So I'm trying to, and also you don't really hear a theremin very much, which we used on Chasing the Dragon. So I try to add, some thematic, interesting stuff to just maybe separate us from the crowd. You know, not just have it be new wave of traditional heavy metal that sounds like Queensryche kind of, right? That's what a lot of them are, right? Not to hate, there's a lot of cool bands out now, but yeah, I try to do something different, do things that I like, that interest me to separate us.
Okay, okay. Now, you're talking about one thing that always is very related with all musicians when they compose music. When you compose music or when you receive influence, it is from the bands, from the old bands. Mostly old people receive influence from the old bands. And mostly the new bands are just releasing new records with the old, the old influence for this. So if we are talking about why always the people are just to attach with the old music and not with the new bands. Do you have any new band that you can recommend, for example, for the readers, or the people who will see this interview, and a new heavy metal beyond Helms Deep, another band that it capture your attention?
Yeah, sure. I think people attach themselves to older bands because they just that was the golden age of music, man. There was so many bands out at that time, and it was just a product of the time. The recording process was also limited, but in the perfect amount. Like, everybody was recording to tape, and you had to really, you had to get that done in like one take, and you really just got the realness of everybody's playing. You got the exact personality of their musicianship, them trying their absolute hardest because they wanted to make it, they wanted to make it big. And yeah, you just had this influx of just this craze, the cultural craze of so many sick bands at that time. So I think everybody they uh they look back as it was just so much awesome stuff that came out at that time. And then, digital music came out, and then everything started getting edited. You could just copy paste, your guitar, and then the life in the music kind of started to go downwards. In my and, everybody's different. A lot of people love that sound, that perfect sound. Like you can literally edit out, the swiping noise when you're going from one chord to another chord. You can just edit that out, right? Like so you have this perfect take now, but to me, it sounds robotic. I like the old stuff. I like to know that it was a real guy playing. He played all that stuff and he gave it his all. He put all that energy into it, right? So there's something, a charm to it in that sense. But I also just like the way it sounds. It sounds more real. Um, and what was the second half of that question? Oh, new bands, right? Yeah, there's some new bands who are doing it, who are keeping it real. One of them is this band Aberration from I think from Norway. This insane, yeah, really sick thrash band. I think they're the dudes. Some of the dudes from Necromantheon are in
Mhm.
that band. Dude, they kick ass. They're awesome. I mean, I like a lot of thrash. Also, like I got a wide spread of the stuff I listen to, but I love death metal and death thrash. They're as far as new stuff, they are awesome. Um, and yeah, it's not like overly edited. It's got that awesome production. It's kind of like um, people like rave about the album Altars of Madness, the Morbid Angel album.
Okay.
People love that album, and it's not like the best produced album. It's not really all shiny and edited and perfect, but it just has it's disgusting. It's disgustingly awesome. And that's what I like out of death metal and thrash. And I think those guys really nail it. Um, yeah, there's some others. There's this band Nature that I grew up around. Oh, I didn't grow up around them, but they were hanging around New York City when I moved back down there. And I ended up hanging out with some of those guys a bunch because we'd go to the same bars. I'd see them around, and yeah, they're a cool band, man. I think they're underappreciated actually, because they were also keeping it real. They're more just classic heavy metal, classic sounding heavy metal, but and they've been around for a while though, longer than Helms Deep. Um, yeah, but they're definitely, they're post 1990. That's what I'm considering new, right? Like when digital music started, that's new to me. Like before that, that's all old school, right? That's where I would draw the line.
Okay, okay. Well, we are very close to this interview, Alex. And for this one, you mentioned one thing about the standardization of the sound. Especially these things came up for the extreme music because always the time the extreme music in metal push the limits, the boundaries to record since that, Autopsy, Morbid Angel, Entomb, Bolt Thrower, they released the records in the 90s, then in the 2000s, and these kind of bands are trying to push the limits to recording technical stuff. And now all these efforts from the old bands now bring to us this standardization in all music, heavy metal, thrash metal, black metal, I don't know, a lot of metal. But you can see, and you said it, now new bands are sounds perfect in every record. No bad musicians, no bad bands, no bad albums, etc., etc. So now, what's your opinion about this one? Is good or is bad for the scene that you can find like 50 records and none of these 50 records sounds bad?
Yeah, I think it's bad. Yeah, I think you got to be yourself. You can't just, copy paste, notes. Like I'll play one note, I'll, record one note, I'll record the second note, and then I put it together. Like that's cheat. It's cheating. I think that's cheating. So I don't think that's good. I think people should be more critical of bands who do that, who are edited. Like even the first Helms Deep album, like they did a lot of editing that I didn't really want to do. I don't like editing. So I was kind of pissed that there was so much editing, but it is was and people like loved it, which I'm just kind of like, all right. I mean, I'm not gonna be mad that they love it. And it is the song. You're still gonna hear the song, so it's okay. But I made sure that I didn't do that again this time. And I don't think yeah, I think people should be harder on bands who edit. I think it should be like less acceptable, socially acceptable, because it's kind of cheating. Like, did you really play that? Can you play that live that well? Because then you'll have a band that's just perfect on record. You go see them and then they can't play it. Or I don't know. Yeah, I think you should just be yourself. Your recording is you. It should be you. It can't be a robot you, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is correct. That is correct. Obviously, and now, well, another topic, one of the last topic for one of the last question for this, and as you can see now, a lot of musicians are playing especially for the live presentation. They're playing without amps, just plugins direct to the console, or just one people in charge of everything. No more crowd, no more people handle the drummer stuff, this kind of just one people plugins and you can play with five, three,
Yeah.
four, 5 members. So what's your opinion about this new one? Because now I think for the producers it's good, but some bands are rejecting this because for them they love to hear the sound of the amps behind of them. But no, not all producers now can pay this kind of sound and just play with the console.
Oh, okay, so you're talking about in the studio, not live, right? Like those units that emulate amplifiers and speakers, right? It's just
Correct.
like one unit. Yeah, I mean, I'd like personally, I don't know. That's a weird one because I personally, if I'm recording, I want the amps. I want real amps. I want the real air coming out of the speaker, and I want that microphone to pick up that sound. I feel like, but then, Ray swears to me that like you can't tell the difference at all, and he may be right. Maybe you can't tell the difference. Maybe they've gotten it so good that it's like the human ear just can't even detect it. But I'll still like know it. I don't know. If I'm recording something, I'm like, I'll still know that it was a fake amp, and that's gonna piss me off. So I need it to be real, because Ray actually did suggest, he's like, we could just use amp mods, like all emulators and or whatever they're called, VSTs and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to do that, dude. Like, let's just do real. Like, let's just keep it all real. Like, you know, that sound came out of an amplifier and a microphone picked it up. And that's physics occurring. So there's some beauty to that. Where again, it's like, do I want even just knowing it was like all ones and zeros and computers like that created my sound? It just, it doesn't sit right with me, right?
Mhm. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Alex, we
Not
arrived.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, sorry. Like, not saying that, people can't make a good record that way. I'm sure there's plenty of records that are made that sound good that way, but
Mm,
yeah, that's a personal preference. I would want to do it like just the old-fashioned way.
great, great. Well, Alex, we arrived to the sad moment of this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me. This new record is a great one. Congratulations of this new one. And perhaps you want to add something to your Latin American fans that expect someday Helms Teams arrive here, the full tour, special gigs, who knows? Oh, and Metallica followers.
Yeah, just check out the new album, Chasing the Dragon, Helms Deep Bandcamp. It's all on there. We're gonna have t-shirts up. Should be on Spotify, Apple Music. You can all listen to it. And yeah, we got vinyls, tapes, CDs. Glad you guys are digging it.